The lobby of Mercy Ridge General Hospital went dead silent the moment security rushed in, hands hovering near their belts, eyes locked on the woman in faded blue scrubs standing near the vending machines. She wasn't yelling, wasn't moving fast, wasn't even looking at them. But the radio chatter had been clear. Possible armed individual near reception holding unknown object. "Ma'am, put it down. Right now." The lead officer's voice cut through the hum of fluorescent lights. His hand stayed on his belt. His partner stepped wide, blocking the exit. The woman, mid-30s, pale skin, dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, didn't flinch. She shifted her weight slightly, leaning on the object in her right hand. A compact metal rod, telescoping, with a rubberized grip. "I said put it down." She looked up slowly. Her eyes were tired, bloodshot. The kind of tired that comes from a 12-hour shift with no breaks. "I won't," she said quietly. "And you're about to make a very big mistake." No one in that lobby, patients, staff, the receptionist still frozen behind the desk, had any idea what was about to happen. They didn't know her name, didn't know where she'd been, didn't know what she'd done before she ever walked into this building wearing scrubs that didn't quite fit. They were about to find out. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit subscribe, drop a comment with the city you're watching from, and stay until the end. Because what happens next? No one saw coming. Emily Rhodes wasn't supposed to be in the lobby. She was supposed to be halfway home by now, sitting in her beat-up Honda with the check engine light that never went off, driving the 23 minutes back to her apartment where the heating barely worked and the neighbors were loud until 2 a.m. But her knee had locked up again halfway through the parkade, the dull throb turning sharp, and she'd had to stop, lean against the concrete pillar, and breathe through it like she'd done 100 times before. The cane helped. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't the kind of thing you saw people using unless they were 70 or fresh out of surgery. But it worked. Collapsible. Lightweight. Sturdy enough to take her full weight when the pain spiked. She'd used worse in worse places. She'd made it to the lobby thinking she'd grab a bottle of water before heading out. That was it. Water. Maybe sit for a minute, then leave. Shut. But someone had seen her. Someone had decided she looked wrong. And someone had called security. The first officer was tall, black, early 40s, with a shaved head and a jaw that looked like it had taken a few punches in its time. His nameplate said K. Williams. He moved like someone who'd done this before. Confident, controlled, expecting compliance. "Ma'am, I need you to put that down and step back." Emily didn't move. She was standing near the vending machines, one hand resting lightly on the cane, the other holding her work bag. Her scrubs were wrinkled. There was a coffee stain near the pocket. Her sneakers had seen better days. "It's not a weapon," she said. Her voice was flat. No anger, no fear, just exhaustion. "I didn't say it was." Williams took another step closer. His partner, a younger white guy with a buzz cut and nervous eyes, moved to the side, trying to flank her. "But we got a call. Someone reported a suspicious individual holding an object, so I need you to cooperate." Emily's jaw tightened. "I'm a nurse. I just got off shift. This is a mobility aid." "Then you won't mind putting it down." "I do mind, actually." She shifted her weight again, and the cane clicked softly against the tile. "Because I need it to stand." William's expression didn't change, but his hand dropped to his belt. "Ma'am, last time. Put it down." Around them, the lobby had gone still. An elderly man in a wheelchair stopped mid-conversation with his daughter. A woman holding a baby stared. The receptionist, a young brunette named Ashley, who Emily had seen a dozen times but never spoken to, leaned forward slightly, eyes wide. Someone was recording. Emily could see the phone, held low near a woman's purse, the red light blinking. "No," Emily said. William's radio crackled. A voice came through, terse. "Status?" He didn't take his eyes off her. "Subject non-compliant, requesting supervisor." Emily exhaled slowly through her nose. This was stupid. This was so unbelievably stupid. She'd been working here for 8 months. 8 months of double shifts, of covering for other nurses who called in sick, of staying late because the ER was slammed and there was no one else. 8 months of being invisible. And now suddenly, they saw her. The supervisor arrived 2 minutes later. Her name was Karen Delacroix, a white woman in her 50s with sharp cheekbones and sharper words. She wore a blazer over her uniform, and her heels clicked like a metronome as she crossed the lobby. "What's going on here?" Williams gestured toward Emily without turning. Uncooperative individual, refusing to comply with security protocol. Delacroix looked at Emily. Her gaze swept from the cane to the scrubs to the bag. "You work here?" "Yes." "What department?" "Surgical floor. Night shift." Delacroix's mouth thinned. "And you're carrying that because—" "Because I need it to walk," Emily said. Her voice stayed level, but something cold had crept into it. "I have a knee injury. This is a mobility aid, not a weapon." "That's not the point." Delacroix crossed her arms. "You're causing a disturbance. Multiple patients have expressed concern. Security has the right to ask you to leave." Emily stared at her. "I'm not disturbing anyone. I was getting water." "You're disturbing people now." The words landed like a slap. Emily felt the heat rise in her chest, but she kept her face blank. She'd learned that a long time ago. Never let them see you crack. "I know my rights," she said quietly. "I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not threatening anyone. And I'm not leaving until I'm ready." Delacroix's eyes flashed. "Then we'll have you removed." "Try it." The lobby seemed to hold its breath. Williams stepped forward, and for a second Emily thought he was actually going to grab her. His hand moved toward her arm, and then the doors exploded open. Not literally, but it felt that way. The double glass doors at the main entrance slammed wide, and the sound of boots, heavy, synchronized, unmistakable, echoed across the marble floor. Everyone turned. 3 figures in tactical gear strode in, moving with the kind of precision that only came from training. 2 men, 1 woman, dark fatigues, patches on their shoulders. The lead, a white man in his 50s with gray at his temples and eyes like flint, scanned the room in half a second, zeroing in on the cluster of people near the vending machines. "Everyone stand down," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Command, authority, the kind that didn't ask twice. Williams froze. Delacroix blinked. Emily didn't move. The man walked forward, and the other 2 fanned out, positioning themselves with practiced ease. He stopped 3 feet from Emily, his gaze flicking to the cane, then to her face. "Ma'am," he said, "are you Emily Rhodes?" She met his eyes. "I am." He nodded once, then turned to Williams. "What's the situation?" Williams opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at Delacroix. She looked at the man in tactical gear, and whatever she was about to say died in her throat. "We received a report," Williams said slowly. "Suspicious individual, holding an unknown object." The man looked at the cane, then back at Williams. "That's a mobility aid." "We didn't know." "You didn't check." The man's tone was flat, final. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim wallet, flipping it open. The ID inside was military, but not standard issue. Emily saw the designation and felt something twist in her chest. Joint Task Force, Special Operations Group. Williams went pale. The man turned back to Emily. "Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale. We received intel about a potential security incident involving a former service member. Can you confirm your status?" Emily's hand tightened on the cane. She hadn't expected this, hadn't wanted this, but there was no going back now. She reached into her bag, moving slowly, and pulled out a small leather case, old, worn, the kind of thing you didn't throw away even when it stopped being useful. She opened it and held it out. Hale took it. His eyes scanned the ID inside, faded photo, younger face, different hair, and the text beneath it. Rhodes, Emily J. U.S. Army. Combat medic assigned. Task Group Sentinel clearance. TS/SCI. He looked up. The lobby had gone so quiet, Emily could hear the hum of the vending machine compressor. "You served with Sentinel?" Hale's voice was quieter now, different. "I did." "How long?" 4 years, 2 deployments. Hale handed the ID back carefully, like it was something fragile. He turned to Williams, and when he spoke, there was no warmth left in his voice. "This woman is a decorated combat medic who served in high-threat environments under fire. She has more training in threat assessment than everyone in this building combined. He gestured to the cane. And you thought that was a weapon? Williams said nothing. Delacroix had gone rigid, her arms still crossed, but her knuckles were white. Hale looked around the lobby. Patients, staff, phones still recording. Anyone here have an actual emergency? No? Then I suggest you all go back to what you were doing. People started moving, slowly at first, then faster. The receptionist ducked behind her desk. The woman with the phone shoved it into her purse. The elderly man's daughter wheeled him toward the elevators without a word. But Emily stayed where she was. So did Williams. So did Delacroix. Hale stepped closer to Emily, lowering his voice. Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you need medical assistance? No. Her voice was hoarse. I just want to go home. Understood. He straightened, then looked at Williams. You have anything else to say to Miss Rhodes? Williams swallowed. I was following protocol. Your protocol, Hale said coldly, just humiliated a veteran in front of a room full of civilians. I suggest you think about that. He turned to Delacroix. And you? Your management? I'm the senior security supervisor, yes. Then you're the one who authorized this? Delacroix's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I was ensuring the safety of our patients. By targeting your own staff. Hale shook his head. You're going to want to document this thoroughly, because if this ends up on the news, and it will, you're going to need a very good explanation. He gestured to Emily. Ms. Rhodes, if you'd like an escort to your vehicle, we can provide one. Emily looked at him, then at Williams, then at Delacroix, whose face had gone from pale to gray. I don't need an escort, she said quietly. But thank you. Hale nodded. Understood. If you need anything at all, contact this number. He handed her a card, plain white, black text, a phone number, and nothing else. Emily took it. Hale stepped back, and the two other soldiers moved with him. They walked toward the doors, boots echoing, and then they were gone. Just like that. The lobby was silent again. Emily turned to Delacroix. The supervisor was staring at her like she'd never seen her before. I'm leaving now, Emily said. Her voice was calm, empty. And tomorrow, I'm filing a formal complaint. Delacroix didn't respond. Emily picked up her bag, adjusted the cane, and walked toward the exit. Every step hurt. Every step always hurt. But she kept her back straight and her eyes forward, and she didn't look back. Behind her, Williams stood frozen. Delacroix pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and started typing. And somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "Who the hell was that?" Emily made it to her car before the shaking started. She sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, and let the adrenaline drain out of her in waves. Her knee throbbed. Her head pounded. She could still hear Williams' voice. Put it down. Last time. She could still see the phones, the stairs, the woman clutching her baby like Emily was a threat. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes. She hadn't wanted this. Hadn't wanted any of this. She'd left that life behind, changed her name, not legally, but enough. Stopped talking about where she'd been, stopped wearing the uniform, stopped thinking about the things she'd seen. But the ID was still in her bag. The clearance was still active. And somewhere, someone had been watching. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick it up. Hello? Ms. Rhodes. The voice was familiar. Hale. I wanted to make sure you got to your vehicle safely. I did. Good. A pause. I also wanted to apologize. We didn't mean to escalate the situation. You didn't escalate it, Emily said. You ended it. Still, another pause. For what it's worth, what you did over there mattered. I hope you know that. Emily's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak. Take care of yourself, Hale said. And then the line went dead. Emily sat there for a long time, and then she started the car and drove home. The video hit social media 6 hours later. It was grainy, shaky, recorded on someone's phone from across the lobby, but the audio was clear enough. Put it down? Last time? No? And then boots, voices. The moment Hale walked in and everything changed. By morning, it had 200,000 views. By noon, 500,000. News outlets picked it up. Local first, then regional, then national. Veteran targeted by hospital security over mobility aid. Former combat medic confronted in hospital lobby. Military steps in. Who is Emily Rhodes? Mercy Ridge General's PR department went into overdrive. Statements were released, apologies were issued, an internal investigation was announced, but the damage was done. Williams was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours. Delacroix was reassigned pending review. The hospital's board of directors called an emergency meeting. And Emily? Emily showed up for her next shift like nothing had happened. She walked through the same lobby, past the same vending machines, past the same reception desk where Ashley sat, wide-eyed and silent. She clocked in. She went to the surgical floor. She did her job. And for the first time in 8 months, people stepped aside when they saw her coming. Not out of fear, out of something else. Respect. 3 days later, Emily got a call from the hospital's chief medical officer, Dr. Leonard Voss, a man she'd seen exactly twice, both times from a distance. Ms. Rhodes, I'd like to speak with you, in person. Emily sat in her apartment, phone pressed to her ear, and didn't say anything. It's not disciplinary, Voss added quickly. I'd like to talk. About what? About what happened, and about what happens next. Emily closed her eyes. I'm not suing. I didn't think you were. Voss sounded tired. But we need to make this right. You can't. Maybe not, but I'd like to try. Emily was quiet for a long time, then, tomorrow, my lunch break, 15 minutes. I'll take it. Voss was waiting for her in a small conference room on the 3rd floor. No windows. 1 table, 2 chairs. He was older than she'd expected, late 60s with white hair and deep lines around his eyes. He stood when she entered. Ms. Rhodes, thank you for coming. Emily sat, didn't take off her coat, kept the cane leaned against the chair. Voss sat across from her. I've reviewed the incident multiple times. I've spoken to witnesses, to security, to management. He paused. And I've read your service record. Emily's jaw tightened. That's classified. Parts of it, not all. He folded his hands on the table. You saved lives. A lot of them. Under conditions most people can't even imagine. I did my job. You did more than that. Voss leaned forward. And then you came here. And we treated you like you didn't matter. Emily didn't respond. I can't undo what happened, Voss said. But I can make sure it doesn't happen again, to you, to anyone. How? Policy changes, mandatory training for all security staff, oversight, accountability. He met her eyes. And a formal apology, public, on record. Emily stared at him. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. She almost laughed. Almost. You're doing this because it's on the news. I'm doing this because you deserved better. Voss's voice was firm. The news just made it impossible to ignore. Emily looked down at her hands, scarred, calloused, the hands of someone who'd stitched wounds in the back of a transport while it shook from explosions. The hands of someone who'd held pressure on a bleeding artery for 20 minutes because the evac was delayed. The hands of someone who'd done things she would never talk about. I don't want recognition, she said quietly. I just want to do my job. You'll get to. I promise you that. Emily stood, picked up her cane, turned toward the door. Miss Rhodes? She stopped. Thank you, Voss said, for your service and for not giving up on us. Emily looked back at him, and for the first time in days, something in her chest loosened. I haven't yet, she said, and then she left. 2 weeks later, Officer K. Williams was officially terminated. The report cited multiple prior complaints, failure to de-escalate, and conduct unbecoming. He didn't contest it. Karen Delacroix was demoted and transferred to a satellite clinic an hour outside the city. She didn't contest it either. The hospital implemented new protocols. Every security officer was required to complete bias training and de-escalation courses. Supervisors had to document every incident in detail with third-party oversight, and Emily Rhodes, quiet, tired, invisible Emily Rhodes, was formally recognized in a staff meeting. Not for the incident, for her years of service, for the lives she'd saved, for the shifts she'd covered when no one else would. People clapped. Some of them had tears in their eyes. Emily stood at the front of the room, leaning on her cane, and said 4 words. "Thank you. Now let's work." And they did. Quote. But late that night, when Emily got home and sat on her couch with a cup of tea that had gone cold, her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Again. She answered. "Ms. Rhodes, it's Hale." Emily straightened. "Sir? I wanted to let you know the unit's watching. We're proud of you." Her throat closed. "And if you ever need anything," Hale continued, "you call that number. Understood?" "Understood." "Good. Take care of yourself, Rhodes." "You too, sir." The line went dead. Emily sat in the dark, staring at the phone in her hand, and for the first time in a very long time she smiled, because they'd tried to make her small, and she'd reminded them exactly who she was, because they'd tried to make her small. And she'd reminded them exactly who she was, but reminders didn't pay rent, and recognition didn't fix the fact that her shift differential had been cut 3 months ago without explanation, or that her request for better parking, closer to the entrance, something that wouldn't make her knees scream after a 12-hour shift, had been denied twice by facilities management with the same form letter both times. Emily went back to work the next day and the day after that. The clapping faded. The tears dried. People still nodded when they passed her in the hallway, but the novelty wore off fast. She was back to being furniture, useful, necessary, invisible. Except now, some people watched her differently. Not the nurses, not the doctors, the administrators. She noticed it first in the break room. Dr. Patricia Kern, the surgical department head, walked in while Emily was microwaving leftover rice. Kern was in her late 50s, white, with silver hair cut short and a permanent expression that suggested she was calculating something unpleasant. She'd been at Mercy Ridge for 20 years. Emily had worked under her for 8 months, and could count on one hand the number of times Kern had spoken directly to her. Kern poured herself coffee, didn't look at Emily, said very casually, "I hear you've been getting some attention." Emily pulled her food out of the microwave. Not by choice. Still, Kern added creamer, stirred slowly. "Attention can be complicated, especially in a place like this." Emily set the container down, looked at her. "Is there something you want to say?" Kern met her eyes. "Just that visibility cuts both ways. People notice you now. That means they notice everything you do." She took a sip. "I'd hate to see you make a mistake." Emily's hand tightened on the edge of the counter. "I don't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes." Kern smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "The question is whether anyone's looking when you do." She walked out. Emily stood there, rice getting cold, and felt something hard settle in her chest. They weren't done with her. Not even close. The next incident came 4 days later. Emily was halfway through a night shift, assisting in post-op recovery, when her supervisor, a man named Gerald Troyer, white, balding, with the kind of soft hands that had never done manual labor, pulled her aside. "Rhodes, a word." She followed him into the hallway. He didn't stop walking until they were near the supply closet, away from the nurse's station. "There's been a complaint," Troyer said. He didn't look at her, kept his eyes on his tablet. "A patient reported that you were abrupt, dismissive." Emily blinked. "Which patient?" "Room 421, Mrs. Calloway." Emily knew Mrs. Calloway. 73, hip replacement, recovering well. No complications. Emily had checked her vitals twice that shift, helped her to the bathroom once, adjusted her pillows when she complained about the angle. "I wasn't abrupt," Emily said. "I did my job." She said, "You didn't smile." Emily stared at him. "She said I didn't smile." "Yes, that's the complaint." Troyer finally looked up. "It's about bedside manner, Rhodes. Patients need to feel cared for, comfortable. If you're coming across as cold—" "I'm not cold, I'm tired." Emily's voice stayed flat. "I've been on my feet for 9 hours. I've changed dressings, administered meds, monitored post-surgical patients, and kept 3 people from coding. I did all of that without a break. So no, I didn't smile." Troyer's mouth thinned. "I'm not saying you're not doing your job. I'm saying you need to do it better. Better how? Warmer, more approachable. He gestured vaguely. You're good at the technical side, but nursing isn't just about that. It's about connection. Emily felt the heat rising in her throat. She swallowed it down. Noted. I'm serious, Rhodes. This isn't the first complaint. That stopped her. What? There have been concerns from patients, from staff. Troyer adjusted his glasses. Nothing major, just a pattern. A pattern of what? Of you being difficult. The word hung in the air like smoke. Emily looked at him, really looked at him, at the soft hands and the clean scrubs and the tablet he held like a shield, at the man who'd never once asked her how she was doing, never once noticed when she stayed late to cover someone else's shift, never once said thank you. Difficult, she repeated. Yes. Because I don't smile enough. Because you don't engage. Troyer's voice sharpened. You do the work, sure, but you don't connect. And in this field, that matters. Emily's jaw tightened. Is there anything else? Troyer hesitated, then, just think about what I said, okay? He walked away. Emily stood in the hallway, hands shaking, and tried to remember how to breathe. She lasted another hour before she had to step outside. Not a full break. Just 5 minutes in the loading dock area, leaning against the brick wall, letting the cold air bite into her skin. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes, it's Hale. She straightened. Sir, is something wrong? That's what I'm calling to ask you. There was a pause. We've been monitoring chatter, internally, and your name came up. Emily's stomach dropped. Monitoring what? Hospital communications, internal emails. There's been an uptick in, let's call it administrative interest, in you. They're watching me. It looks that way. Emily closed her eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because you should know. Hale's voice was calm, steady. And because if it escalates, we can step in, but only if you want us to. I don't need you to fight my battles. I know, but the offer stands. Another pause. You doing okay? Emily almost laughed. Define okay. Still standing, still fighting. She looked down at her hands, scarred, shaking. Yeah, I'm still standing. Good. Keep it that way. The line went dead. Emily shoved the phone in her pocket and went back inside. The third incident happened 2 weeks later. Emily was restocking supplies in the surgical prep area when Dr. Kern walked in with another surgeon, Dr. Marcus Lowe, a black man in his early 40s with sharp eyes and a reputation for not tolerating incompetence. Kern didn't acknowledge Emily, just started talking to Lowe like she wasn't there. I'm concerned about the staffing levels, Kern said. We're stretched too thin, and some of the nurses... She trailed off meaningfully. Lowe glanced at Emily, then back at Kern. What about them? Let's just say not everyone is up to standard. Emily kept stalking, didn't look up. Lowe frowned. Anyone specific you're worried about? Kern smiled. I'd rather not name names, but if you notice any issues, let me know. They left. Emily stood there, box of gloves in her hands, and felt the walls closing in. She started keeping a record after that. Every shift, every task, every interaction. She wrote it down in a small notebook she kept in her locker. Dates, times, names, what was said. She didn't know if it would matter, but it felt like the only thing she could control. Her coworkers noticed, some of them, anyway. A younger nurse named Tasha Gomes, Latina, mid-20s, always smiling, caught her writing one night during a rare quiet moment. What's that? Emily closed the notebook. Nothing. Tasha leaned against the counter. Doesn't look like nothing. Emily didn't answer. Tasha was quiet for a moment, then, They're messing with you, aren't they? Emily looked up. What? Kern Troyer, the whole admin side. Tasha lowered her voice. I've seen it before. They pick someone, make them the problem, then they build a case. A case for what? For getting rid of you. Emily's chest tightened. I haven't done anything wrong. Doesn't matter. Tasha glanced toward the hallway. They don't need you to do something wrong. They just need you to look wrong. And after what happened in the lobby, she trailed off. You embarrassed them, publicly. They're not going to forget that. Emily stared at her. So what do I do? Tasha shrugged. Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't give them anything. She paused. Or you could fight back. How? I don't know. But you're not the only one who's noticed. Tasha straightened. There are people here who see what's happening. If you need backup, you've got it. Emily didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Tasha smiled, quick, genuine, and walked away. What? The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Emily was in the middle of a shift when Troyer pulled her aside again. Same hallway, same tired expression. Rhodes, we need to talk. Emily's stomach sank. About what? There's been another complaint. From who? Dr. Kern. Emily's hands went cold. What's the complaint? Troyer pulled up something on his tablet. She says you're not following protocol. Specifically, you're not documenting patient interactions properly. Emily stared at him. That's not true. She has examples. Show me. Troyer hesitated, then he turned the tablet around. Emily scanned the screen. It was a list of patient files, times, notes, except half of them weren't hers. This isn't my handwriting, Emily said. It's digital. Then check the login. I didn't write these. Troyer pulled the tablet back. Kern says you did. Then Kern is lying. The words came out before Emily could stop them. Troyer's face went stiff. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Emily's voice shook. I keep detailed records. I can prove it. Prove it how? I have a notebook. Everything I do, every shift, every patient. Troyer's expression shifted. Something wary crept into his eyes. You're keeping a personal record? Yes. Of hospital activities. Of my work. That's against policy. Emily felt the ground shift under her. What? Unauthorized documentation of hospital activities is a violation of confidentiality protocols. Troyer straightened. I'm going to need that notebook. No. Rhodes, no. Emily stepped back. That's my personal property. You don't have a right to it. If it contains patient information, it doesn't. It's my work log, my shifts, my tasks, nothing confidential. Troyer's jaw tightened. Then you won't mind handing it over. Emily's heart hammered. I'm not giving you anything without talking to a lawyer. Troyer went very still. A lawyer? Yes. Rhodes, I'm trying to help you here. No, you're trying to build a case. Emily's voice was cold now, clear. And I'm not going to make it easy. Troyer stared at her. Then he turned and walked away without another word. Emily stood there, shaking, and knew she'd just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She called Hale that night, didn't wait, didn't hesitate. He answered on the second ring. Rhodes, they're trying to fire me. Silence. Then, explain. She told him, all of it, the complaints, the documentation, Troyer's demand for the notebook. Hale listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, Do you have the notebook with you? It's in my locker. Get it tonight. Take it home. Make copies. Why? Because if they're building a case, that notebook is evidence. And if it disappears, you lose your leverage. Emily's throat tightened. What do I do? You document everything. You keep your head down, and you wait. Wait for what? For them to make a mistake. Hale's voice was hard. Because they will. People like that always do. And if they don't, then we step in. Emily closed her eyes. I don't want to be a victim. You're not. You're a fighter. A pause. And fighters don't quit. The line went dead. Emily sat in her apartment, staring at the wall, and made a decision. She wasn't quitting. But she wasn't waiting either. The next morning, Emily walked into the hospital and went straight to HR. Not Troyer, not Kern, Human Resources. The director was a woman named Sharon Kemp, black, early 50s, with tired eyes and a desk covered in files. She looked up when Emily knocked. Can I help you? I need to file a formal complaint. Kemp's expression didn't change. Against who? Dr. Patricia Kern and Gerald Troyer. Harassment, retaliation, falsification of records. Kemp set down her pen. That's a serious claim. I have evidence. Emily pulled out a folder. Inside, copies of her notebook, printed emails, screenshots of the patient files Troyer had shown her, cross-referenced with login times that proved they weren't hers. Kemp took the folder, flipped through it slowly. Her face gave nothing away. Where did you get this? I kept records of everything. Kemp looked up. You know this is going to cause problems. It already has. Kemp was quiet for a long moment. Then she closed the folder. I'll look into it. That's it? That's all I can promise. Kemp's voice softened slightly. But off the record, you're not the first person to come to me about Kern. You're just the first one with proof. Emily's chest loosened, just a little. What happens now? I start an investigation, quietly. And you... Kemp met her eyes. You keep doing your job. Don't engage, don't escalate. Let me handle this. Emily nodded. As she stood to leave, Kemp said, Rhodes. Emily turned. Be careful. People like Kern don't go down easy. Emily walked out. For 3 days, nothing happened. Emily worked her shifts, avoided Kern, avoided Troyer. Tasha checked in on her twice, quiet and careful. Other nurses started watching too. Angela, Marcus, even old Raymond, who'd been there longer than anyone. Then, on the 4th day, everything exploded. Emily was in the break room when the door slammed open. Kern stood there, face pale, mouth tight. You filed a complaint. Emily set down her coffee. Yes. Do you have any idea what you've done? My job. Kern stepped closer. You've accused me of falsifying records, of harassment. Do you understand how serious that is? Do you understand how serious it is to actually do those things? Kern's eyes flashed. I have been at this hospital for 20 years. 20 years. And you, some nobody with a cane and a sob story, think you can waltz in here and destroy my reputation? Emily stood, slowly. I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself. You have no proof. I have plenty. Kern's jaw worked. This isn't over. I know. Kern turned and left. The door slammed behind her. Emily sat back down. Her hands were shaking again. But this time, it wasn't fear. The investigation took 2 weeks. Emily didn't know what was happening behind closed doors, but she felt the shift. Kern stopped showing up to rounds. Troyer avoided the surgical floor entirely. Kemp called Emily in twice for follow-up questions, each time professional, thorough, revealing nothing. And then, late one night, Emily's phone buzzed. Kemp's name on the screen. Emily answered. Hello? Rhodes, it's Sharon Kemp. Can you come to my office tomorrow, 10 a.m.? What's this about? I'd rather discuss it in person. The line went dead. Emily didn't sleep that night. Kemp's office was small and windowless. Emily sat across from her, hands folded, waiting. Kemp pulled out a file, set it on the desk between them. The investigation is complete. Emily's heart hammered. And? Dr. Kern has been placed on administrative leave pending further review. Gerald Troyer has been reassigned to a different department, effective immediately. Emily stared. What? Your evidence was solid. We cross-checked the login records, the patient files, the emails. Kemp leaned back. Kern was falsifying documentation to build a case against you. Troyer was complicit. It's grounds for termination. Emily couldn't breathe. They're being fired? That's up to the board, but they're out of your department, permanently. Emily's hands shook. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know. Kemp's voice softened. And because you did the right thing, even when it was hard. Emily looked down, tried to find words, couldn't. There's one more thing, Kemp said. Emily looked up. We're offering you a position. Lead surgical nurse, day shift, better hours, better pay. Emily blinked. What? You've proven you can handle pressure. You've proven you won't back down. We need people like that. Kemp slid a paper across the desk. It's yours if you want it. Emily stared at the paper, at the title, at the salary, at everything she'd fought for without even realizing she was fighting. She swallowed. I need to think about it. Take your time. Kemp stood, extended her hand. But for what it's worth, you earned this. Emily shook her hand, walked out of the office, made it halfway down the hallway before her legs gave out, and she had to sit on the floor, back against the wall, trying to process what had just happened. Tasha found her there 10 minutes later. Emily, you okay? Emily looked up, and for the first time in months, she smiled. Yeah, I think I am. But that night, when Emily got home and checked her phone, there was a message waiting. Unknown number. Not Hale this time. She opened it. You think you won. You didn't. This isn't over. No name, no signature. Emily stared at the screen and the smile faded, because somewhere out there someone was still watching, and they weren't done with her yet. Because somewhere out there someone was still watching, and they weren't done with her yet. Emily deleted the message. Then she blocked the number. Then she sat on her couch in the dark and tried to convince herself it didn't matter. It didn't work. She knew the pattern. Anonymous threats didn't come from nowhere. They came from people who'd lost power and wanted it back. People who thought intimidation was easier than accountability. People who'd spent 20 years building a reputation and watched it crumble in 2 weeks because someone finally had the guts to push back. Kern. It had to be Kern. Emily's phone buzzed again. Different number this time. She almost didn't answer. But the area code was local. Hospital exchange. Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes. This is Dr. Leonard Voss. Emily sat up straight. The chief medical officer didn't call nurses. Not directly, not ever. Sir, I apologize for the late hour, but I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow. Voss paused. You're aware of the investigation's outcome? Sharon Kemp briefed me. Good. Then you also know we're offering you a promotion. Emily's throat tightened. She mentioned it. Have you made a decision? Not yet. Voss was quiet for a moment. Ms. Rhodes, I'm going to be blunt. What happened to you was unacceptable. Dr. Kern and Mr. Troyer abused their positions. They targeted you, they falsified records, they created a hostile work environment, and they did it because they could. His voice hardened, or so they thought. Emily didn't respond. You exposed them, Voss continued. You documented everything. You followed protocol. You did exactly what we tell people to do when they face harassment. And it worked. Another pause. That's rare. You should know that. I do. So I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Emily's chest tightened. Okay. Do you feel safe here? The question hit her like cold water. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know, she said finally. That's what I thought. Voss exhaled. Ms. Rhodes, if you take this position, you'll have more visibility, more responsibility, and more targets on your back. People who supported Kern won't forget. People who think you got special treatment won't forgive. You'll be walking into a political minefield. Then why offer it to me? Because you earned it. And because I think you can handle it. Voss's tone softened slightly. But I won't lie to you. It won't be easy. Emily stared at the wall. Nothing ever is. No, it's not. A pause. Think about it. Take the weekend. We'll talk Monday. The line went dead. Emily sat there, phone in her hand, and realized she was shaking again. Go. She didn't sleep. By 3 a.m., she gave up trying and went for a walk. Not far. Just around the block. Her knee protested every step, but the cold air helped clear her head. The promotion was real. The money was real. The respect, or at least the appearance of it, was real. But so was the message on her phone. She turned the corner and nearly walked into someone. Whoa! Easy! Emily stumbled back, cane scraping pavement. The man in front of her raised his hands. Sorry, didn't mean to scare you. He was white, maybe 50, with graying hair and a jacket that didn't quite fit. Emily didn't recognize him. She stepped to the side. It's fine. You're Emily Rhodes, right? Emily froze. Who's asking? The man pulled out a badge, not police, private investigator. The name on the ID read Daniel Marsh. I've been hired to look into some irregularities at Mercy Ridge General, Marsh said. Specifically, the recent administrative actions involving Dr. Patricia Kern. Emily's stomach dropped. I don't have anything to say. I'm not asking you to say anything. I'm just letting you know. Marsh put the badge away. Kern's lawyers are building a case. Wrongful termination. Defamation. They're claiming the hospital used falsified evidence to force her out. Emily stared at him. The evidence wasn't falsified. I provided it. I know, and that's the problem. Marsh met her eyes. They're going after you next. Civil suit. They're claiming you fabricated records to frame her. Emily felt the ground tilt. That's insane. Maybe. But it's what they're doing. Marsh handed her a card. Plain white. Black text. A phone number. If you need someone to talk to, someone who isn't hospital administration, call me. Why would I trust you? Because I don't work for Kern. I work for the truth. Marsh stepped back. Think about it. He walked away. Emily stood on the sidewalk, card in her hand, and felt the walls closing in again. She called Hale at sunrise. Didn't care if it was too early. Didn't care if she was overreacting. He answered on the first ring. Rhodes, what's wrong? She told him. The message, the investigator, the lawsuit. Hale listened in silence. When she finished, he said, You still have the notebook, the original? Yes. Good. Don't let it out of your sight, and don't talk to anyone about the case without a lawyer present. I don't have a lawyer. You will. I'll make a call. Emily's throat tightened. I can't afford. You won't have to. Hale's voice was firm. We take care of our own. You'll have representation by end of business today. Why are you doing this? Because you served, and because this is exactly the kind of thing we exist to prevent. A pause. Sit tight. Don't engage. Let them come to you. And then what? Then we bury them. The line went dead. Emily sat on her couch, watching the sun rise through the window, and tried to believe him. The lawyer showed up at noon. Her name was Victoria Lang, Asian, mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She walked into Emily's apartment like she owned it and set a briefcase on the coffee table. Ms. Rhodes, I've reviewed your file. All of it. Lang sat down without being invited. You're in a strong position, but we need to be smart about this. Emily sat across from her. What does that mean? It means Kern's team is going to try to discredit you. They'll dig into your background, your service record, your medical history, anything they can use to paint you as unstable or unreliable. Emily's jaw tightened. My service record is classified. Parts of it. Not all. Lang pulled out a tablet. They'll focus on your discharge, the injury, the circumstances. I was medically retired, honorably. I know, but they'll twist it. Make it sound like you couldn't handle the pressure, like you have a history of conflict. Lang looked up. Do you? Emily stared at her. Do I what? Have a history of conflict, complaints, disciplinary actions, anything they can point to. No. Good. Then we focus on the facts, the documentation, the login records, the emails. We make this about what Kern did, not what you are. Emily leaned back. And if they don't care about facts, then we make them care. Lang's expression didn't change. I've handled cases like this before. People in power who think they're untouchable. They always make the same mistake. What's that? They underestimate the people they've hurt. Lang closed the tablet. Don't let them do that to you. Emily nodded slowly. Lang stood. I'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't talk to anyone about the case. Not coworkers, not friends, not reporters. If someone approaches you, refer them to me. She handed Emily a card. Then she left. Emily sat alone in the apartment and felt the weight settle on her shoulders again. Monday came too fast. Emily walked into the hospital expecting whispers, stares, maybe worse. What she got was silence. People moved out of her way in the hallways. Nurses she'd worked with for months suddenly had somewhere else to be. The break room emptied when she walked in. Tasha found her during lunch, sat down across from her without asking. They're scared, Tasha said quietly. Emily looked up. Of what? Of you. Of what you represent. Tasha leaned forward. You took down Kern. You stood up to administration. You won. That scares people. Why? Because it means they have to think about what they've been letting slide, what they've been ignoring. Tasha's voice dropped. You made them look at themselves, and they don't like what they see. Emily set down her sandwich. I didn't do this to make a point. I know, but you did anyway. Tasha stood. For what it's worth. Some of us are glad you did. She walked away. Emily sat alone in the break room and wondered if winning was supposed to feel this hollow. Come on. The first deposition happened 3 days later. Emily sat in a conference room downtown, Lang on her left, a court reporter on her right, and Kern's legal team across the table. 3 lawyers, all men, all white, all in suits that cost more than Emily made in a month. The lead attorney was a man named Gerald Hoffman, late 50s, silver hair, voice like gravel. Miss Rhodes, thank you for being here. Emily said nothing. Hoffman opened a folder. I'd like to start by asking about your employment history at Mercy Ridge General, specifically the events leading up to Dr. Kern's suspension. Lang cut in. My client has already provided a detailed account. It's in the record. I'm aware, but I'd like to hear it in her own words. Hoffman looked at Emily. Ms. Rhodes, when did you first decide to file a complaint against Dr. Kern? Emily kept her voice flat. When I realized she was falsifying records to build a case against me. And how did you reach that conclusion? I cross-referenced the patient files she showed my supervisor with the login records. The times didn't match. The entries weren't mine. But you can't prove that definitively, can you? Yes, I can. Emily pulled out a copy of her notebook, set it on the table. I kept a record, every shift, every task, every patient interaction, times, dates, details. It's all here. Hoffman glanced at the notebook. And when did you start keeping this record? 8 months ago, when I started working at Mercy Ridge. So you've been documenting your colleagues for 8 months. Lung's hand came down on the table. Objection. Mischaracterization. Miss Rhodes documented her own work, not her colleagues. Hoffman smiled. Of course. He turned a page. Ms. Rhodes, would you describe yourself as someone who gets along well with authority figures? Emily's jaw tightened. I follow orders when they make sense. And when they don't? I ask questions. Would you say you have a problem with authority? Lang stood. This is irrelevant. We're here to discuss Dr. Kern's conduct, not my client's personality. Hoffman leaned back. I'm establishing context. You're fishing. Lang's voice was ice. Move on, or we're done here. Hoffman stared at her, then at Emily. Then he closed the folder. We'll reconvene next week. Emily walked out of that building with her hand shaking and her knee screaming and Lang's voice in her ear. You did fine. Don't let them get in your head. But they were already there. The story started hitting the news 2 days later. Not national, just local. But enough. Former hospital administrator files suit against Mercy Ridge General. Dr. Patricia Kern claims wrongful termination, cites fabricated evidence. Whistleblower or troublemaker? Inside the case dividing Mercy Ridge. Emily's name wasn't in the headlines, but it was in the articles, buried, implied, enough for people to know. Her phone started ringing. Reporters, bloggers, people she'd never heard of asking for comment. She ignored them all. But the damage was done. Patients started requesting different nurses. Staff stopped making eye contact. Someone left a printed article on her locker with a note. Was it worth it? Emily crumpled the note and threw it away. That night, she got another message. Same unknown number as before. You think you're safe because you have lawyers. You're not. This is just beginning. Emily stared at the screen. Then she forwarded it to Lang, then to Hale. Hale called 30 seconds later. Rhodes, pack a bag. Emily's blood went cold. What? Someone's escalating. These aren't just threats anymore. They're testing you. Hale's voice was hard. I'm sending someone to your location. They'll stay outside. You don't leave without them. You think I'm in danger? I think someone wants you scared enough to back down. And I'm not taking chances. Emily looked around her apartment, at the cheap furniture and the stained carpet and the window that didn't lock right. Okay, she said quietly. Good. Sit tight. The line went dead. Emily sat on her couch, lights off, and waited. The protection detail arrived an hour later. 2 people. 1 man, 1 woman. Both in civilian clothes, both moving like soldiers. They didn't come inside, just took up positions outside her building, visible but not obvious. Emily watched from the window and felt something crack in her chest. She'd been in war zones. She'd treated casualties under fire. She'd done things most people couldn't imagine. But this was different. This was home. This was supposed to be safe, and it wasn't. She grabbed her phone, dialed a number she hadn't used in years. It rang 4 times. Then a voice answered, older, rough. Yeah? Dad, it's me. Silence. Then, Emily? Yeah. Another pause. You okay? Emily's throat closed. No. What happened? She told him, not everything, just enough. The promotion, the lawsuit, the threats. Her father listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, You need me to come out there? No. Emily swallowed. I just needed to hear your voice. You in danger? I don't know. Maybe. Then get out. I can't. Why not? Because if I leave, they win. Her father was quiet for a long time. Then, you always were stubborn. Emily almost laughed. Yeah. You got people watching your back? Yeah. Good. Don't trust anyone else. A pause. And Emily? Yeah? Don't let them make you small. You hear me? Emily's vision blurred. I hear you. Good. Call me if anything changes. The line went dead. Emily sat in the dark and let herself cry for the first time in months. But the breaking point came 4 days later. Emily was halfway through a shift when the fire alarm went off. Not a drill. The real thing. Sirens, strobes, automated voice telling everyone to evacuate. Chaos erupted instantly. Patients panicked. Nurses scrambled. Emily grabbed her cane and started moving, helping an elderly man in a wheelchair toward the stairwell. The smoke hit on the 3rd floor. Thick, black, chemical. Someone screamed. Emily's training kicked in. She pulled the man's wheelchair back away from the smoke and yelled for help. 2 other nurses appeared, Marcus and Angela. They grabbed the wheelchair and started moving. Emily turned back toward the floor. Other patients were still in their rooms, post-op, sedated, vulnerable. She ran. The smoke was thicker now, the alarm deafening. She made it to the first room and found a woman, mid-60s, post-cardiac surgery, trying to sit up. Don't move, I've got you. Emily grabbed the IV pole and started wheeling the bed toward the door. Her knee buckled. She caught herself on the rail, kept moving. The hallway was chaos, staff running, patients shouting, fire suppression systems kicking in, spraying foam. Emily made it to the stairwell, handed the patient off to another nurse, turned back. Rhodes, don't! She ignored the voice, went back in. 3 more rooms, 3 more patients. She got them all out. By the time she made it back to the stairwell, her lungs were burning and her leg was screaming and her vision was starting to blur. Someone grabbed her arm, pulled her through the door. You're done. Move. It was Tasha, face streaked with soot, eyes wide. They made it down 4 flights, out into the parking lot. Chaos. Fire trucks. Ambulances. People everywhere. Emily collapsed against a wall, coughing, and tried to breathe. A paramedic appeared. Ma'am, you need oxygen. I'm fine. You're not fine. Sit. Emily sat. Let them put the mask on. Let them check her vitals. Let the world blur into noise. And then she saw her, across the parking lot, standing near the ambulances, watching. Dr. Patricia Kern. Their eyes met. Kern smiled. Then she turned and walked away. Emily ripped the oxygen mask off and stood. Ms. Rhodes, she ignored the paramedic, ignored the shouts. Walked across the parking lot, legs screaming, vision tunneling. Kern was getting into a car. Black sedan, tinted windows. Emily reached it just as the door started to close. You did this. Kern looked at her. I have no idea what you're talking about. The fire. You said it. Kern's smile widened. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? Emily's hands shook. I'll find it. Good luck. Kern leaned forward. You know what your problem is, Rhodes? You think the rules protect you. They don't. They protect people like me. She pulled the door closed. Enjoy the rest of your shift. The car drove away. Emily stood in the parking lot, smoke rising behind her, and felt something inside her break. Not her spirit, not her resolve, her patience. She pulled out her phone, dialed Hale. He answered immediately. Rhodes, I heard about the fire. You okay? No. And I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need access to Kern's financial records, phone logs, security footage from the hospital, everything. Silence. Then, that's not legal. I don't care. Rhodes, she just tried to kill people, patients, staff. She set a fire in a hospital. Emily's voice cracked. And she's going to do it again unless someone stops her. Hale was quiet for a long moment. You're sure? I saw her. She was watching. She wanted me to know. Another pause. Okay. Give me 48 hours. Thank you. Rhodes, if we do this, there's no going back. I know. The line went dead. Emily stood in the parking lot, surrounded by sirens and smoke and chaos, and made a decision. She wasn't running anymore. She was hunting. The fire was ruled accidental. Electrical malfunction in a storage closet. No injuries. Minimal damage. Emily didn't believe it for a second. She went back to work the next day. Ignored the stares, ignored the whispers. Focused. Lang called that afternoon. We have a problem. Emily's stomach dropped. What? Kern's team just filed a motion. They're requesting access to your military records, all of them. They can't do that. It's classified. They're claiming it's relevant to your credibility. They're arguing that your service record contains information that would undermine your testimony. Emily's chest tightened. What information? I don't know, but they're pushing hard. Lang paused. Do you have anything in your record that could be used against you? Emily thought about the missions she couldn't talk about, the things she'd done, the things she'd seen, the reports filed and sealed and buried. No, she said. Lang didn't sound convinced. Okay, I'll fight the motion, but Emily, if there's something I need to know, tell me now. There's nothing. Good. Stay close to your phone. The line went dead. Emily sat at her kitchen table and stared at the wall. 48 hours, Hale had said. She had 46 left. Hale called at 11 p.m. the next night. We have it. Emily sat up. Have what? Everything. Financial transfers, phone records, security footage. Hale's voice was grim. You were right. Kern's dirty. Very dirty. How dirty? Embezzlement, kickbacks from pharmaceutical reps, falsified research data, and 3 months ago she made a payment to a contractor with a history of arson. Emily's heart hammered. The fire. Hale paused. We also found communication between her and a lawyer. They've been planning this lawsuit for weeks, before she was even suspended. She knew I was coming. She knew someone was coming. She just didn't know it would be you. Hale's tone hardened. Rhodes, this is enough to bury her, but we have to move fast. Once her team realizes we have this, they'll start covering tracks. What do you need from me? Nothing. You stay out of it. Let us handle this. No. Rhodes, I'm not sitting on the sidelines. Not this time. Emily's voice was steel. Tell me what to do. Hale was silent for a long moment. Then, meet me tomorrow, noon. There's someone you need to talk to. Who? The FBI. Emily's breath caught. This isn't just about you anymore, Hale said quietly. Kern's operation goes deeper than one hospital. We're talking fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. The Bureau's been watching her for months. They just needed someone on the inside willing to talk. I'm not on the inside anymore. You are. You just don't know it yet. A pause. Meet me tomorrow. We'll explain everything. The line went dead. Emily sat in the dark, phone in her hand, and realized she'd just stepped into something much bigger than a wrongful termination suit. And somewhere in the city, Patricia Kern had no idea the walls were about to come down. And somewhere in the city, Patricia Kern had no idea the walls were about to come down. Emily met Hale in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the hospital. Not the kind of place doctors went. Too cheap, too loud. Perfect for a conversation no one was supposed to hear. He was already sitting when she arrived, back to the wall, eyes on the door. Old habits. A woman sat next to him. Black, early 40s, dark suit, federal badge, clipped to her belt but mostly hidden by her jacket. Hale stood when Emily approached. Rhodes, this is Special Agent Michaela Grimes, FBI Financial Crimes Division. Grimes extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. Ms. Rhodes, thank you for meeting with us. Emily sat. What's this about? Grimes pulled out a slim folder. Didn't open it yet. How much do you know about Dr. Patricia Kern's activities outside the hospital? I know she's a liar. I know she falsified records. I know she tried to get me fired. That's the surface. Grimes opened the folder, slid a photograph across the table. This is Kern 3 months ago. Raleigh, North Carolina, meeting with a man named Victor Petros. Emily looked at the photo. Kern sitting in a restaurant booth across from a white man in his 50s. Expensive suit. Cold eyes. Who's Victor Petros? A fixer. He specializes in making problems disappear. Financial problems. Legal problems. People problems. Grimes pulled out another photo. 2 weeks after this meeting, Petros wired $50,000 to a shell company registered in Delaware. That company paid a contractor named James Wyrick. Wyrick has 3 prior convictions for arson. Emily's stomach dropped. The hospital fire. We can't prove it yet, but the timeline matches. Wyrick was in the area. He checked into a motel 6 blocks from Mercy Ridge the night before the fire. Checked out the morning after. Emily's hands tightened on the table. You're telling me Kern paid someone to burn down part of the hospital. We're telling you Kern has been running a long-term fraud operation, and she's willing to escalate to violence to protect it. Grimes pulled out more documents, bank statements, wire transfers, email printouts. Over the past 4 years, Kern has embezzled approximately $1.2 million from hospital research grants. She's also taken kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies in exchange for manipulating clinical trial data. Emily stared at the papers. How did no one notice? She's careful. She spreads the transactions out, uses intermediaries, buries the discrepancies in legitimate expenses. Grimes leaned forward, but she made one mistake. What? She targeted you. Grimes' expression didn't change. When you filed that complaint, you triggered an internal audit. The hospital brought in outside accountants. They started finding things. Small things at first, then bigger things. They brought it to us 6 weeks ago. Emily's chest tightened. You've been investigating her this whole time. We have, but we didn't have enough for an arrest. Kern's too smart. Everything's buried. Everything's deniable. Grimes paused. Until now. What changed? Hale spoke up. We got access to her communications, personal emails, text messages, phone logs, things she thought were encrypted. He tapped the folder. She's been coordinating with her lawyer to discredit you, publicly. She wanted you destroyed so thoroughly that even if the fraud came to light, no one would believe the person who exposed her. Emily felt something cold settle in her chest. She was using the lawsuit as cover. Exactly. Grimes pulled the documents back. But here's the problem. Everything we have is circumstantial. Wire transfers, meetings, communications. A good lawyer can explain all of it away. What we need is someone who can testify to the pattern, someone with first-hand knowledge of her methods. Emily looked at her. You want me to wear a wire? Grimes didn't blink. We want you to go back to work. Act normal. If Kern or anyone in her network approaches you, we want you to engage. Get them talking. You want me to bait her? We want you to give her the opportunity to incriminate herself. Grimes's voice was calm, steady. You don't have to say yes. This is voluntary. But if you do this, we can protect you. Full immunity. Witness protection if necessary. Emily's throat tightened. And if I say no, then we keep building the case. It'll take longer. Kern will have more time to cover her tracks, and there's a good chance she walks. Emily looked at Hale. He met her eyes, said nothing, letting her decide. She thought about the fire, the smoke, the patients she'd pulled out of their rooms, the look on Kern's face as she drove away. What do I have to do? The briefing took 2 hours. Grimes laid it out step by step. Emily would go back to work, resume her normal shifts. The FBI would monitor her communications. If Kern or anyone connected to her made contact, Emily was to engage but not push. Let them come to her. Let them talk. Don't try to get a confession, Grimes said. Just keep them talking. Let them think you're scared. Let them think you're ready to back down. And if they offer me something, take it, record it, report it. Emily's stomach churned. You're asking me to lie. We're asking you to survive. Grimes's expression softened slightly. Kern is dangerous. She's already proven she'll hurt people to protect herself. If you do this, you're putting yourself at risk. I won't pretend otherwise. Then why ask me? Because you're already at risk, and this gives you a chance to end it. Emily sat back, looked at the papers spread across the table, at Kern's face in the photographs, at the bank statements showing money that should have gone to research, to equipment, to patient care. Okay, she said quietly. I'll do it. Grimes nodded. We'll start tomorrow. And then, Emily went back to work the next morning like nothing had changed. Same scrubs, same cane, same parking spot 3 rows from the entrance because the closer ones were still denied. The FBI tech had wired her before her shift. A tiny microphone clipped inside her collar. A recording device the size of a credit card tucked into her pocket. Grimes had been clear. Wear it always. Record everything. Even bathroom breaks? Emily had asked. Especially bathroom breaks, that's where people think they're safe. So Emily wore it, and she waited. The first 2 days were quiet. Normal shifts, normal patients, a few whispers from staff who'd seen the news coverage, but nothing direct. Emily documented everything in her notebook, kept her head down, acted normal. On the 3rd day, someone approached her in the parking lot. Not Kern. A man. White. Mid-30s. Expensive suit. He fell into step beside her as she walked toward her car.
Ms. Rhodes, my name is Thomas Vickery. I'm an attorney representing Dr. Patricia Kern. Emily kept walking. I have nothing to say to you. I understand, but I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. Vickery pulled out a business card. Emily didn't take it. He slipped it into her bag anyway. Dr. Kern is willing to drop the lawsuit. All of it. In exchange for a simple statement. Emily stopped. Turned. What kind of statement? An acknowledgement that certain misunderstandings may have occurred. That perhaps the documentation you provided was incomplete or taken out of context. Vickery smiled. Nothing that would impact your career, just enough to clear Dr. Kern's name. Emily stared at him. The microphone was recording. She could feel it against her skin. You want me to lie? I want you to reconsider your interpretation of events. Vickery's smile didn't waver. Dr. Kern has had a long and distinguished career. It would be a shame to see it end over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. She falsified records. So you say. But can you prove it? In court? Under oath? With her legal team picking apart every detail of your testimony? Vickery stepped closer. Think about it, Ms. Rhodes. You're a nurse. She's a doctor with 20 years of experience and connections throughout the medical community. Who do you think a jury will believe? Emily's jaw tightened. Is that a threat? It's reality. Vickery pulled out an envelope. Here's the statement. Look it over. Think about it. You have 48 hours. He walked away. Emily stood in the parking lot, envelope in her hand, and counted to 10 before getting in her car. She met Grimes in a parking garage downtown an hour later, handed over the recording device. Grimes listened to the audio twice. Her expression didn't change. He's careful. Doesn't explicitly threaten you. Doesn't admit to anything. She looked up. But it's a start. Did you take the envelope? Yes? Good. Open it. Read it. Don't sign anything, but make them think you're considering it. Emily's stomach turned. You want me to string them along. I want you to keep them talking. Grimes's voice was firm. Kern thinks she can buy you off. Let her think it's working. And then what? Then she gets sloppy. People like her always do. Emily drove home, read the statement. It was exactly what Vickery had described. Carefully worded, plausibly deniable. Enough to create reasonable doubt about Kern's guilt without outright exonerating her. Emily's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes. Thomas Vickery. Have you had a chance to review the document? I'm looking at it. And? Emily forced her voice to shake slightly. I don't know. This is a lot. I understand. It's a difficult position. Vickery's tone softened. But think about what you're gaining. No lawsuit, no depositions, no more harassment. You can go back to your life. What about Kern? Dr. Kern goes back to hers. Everyone moves on. Emily was quiet for a moment, then, I need more time. You have 48 hours. I need a week. Vickery paused. 3 days. Final offer. Okay? The line went dead. Emily sat in her apartment, phone in her hand, and wondered how far Kern was willing to go. She found out 2 days later. Emily was leaving the hospital after a night shift when a car pulled up beside her. Black sedan. Tinted windows. The back door opened. Patricia Kern sat inside. Get in. Emily's heart hammered. She glanced around. The parking lot was empty. 4 a.m. No witnesses. She got in. Kern closed the door. The driver, a man Emily didn't recognize, pulled out of the lot. Where are we going? Nowhere. We're just going to talk. Kern turned to face her. You've been considering Vickery's offer. How do you know that? Because I know everything that happens in my orbit, Miss Rhodes, including what happens to people who cross me. Kern's voice was cold, calm. Let me be very clear. You sign that statement, this ends. You don't, and I will destroy you. Not just your career, your life, your family, everything. Emily kept her breathing steady. The microphone was recording. You can't do that. Can't I? Kern leaned back. I have connections you can't imagine. Judges, lawyers, hospital boards across 3 states. I can make sure you never work in healthcare again. I can make sure your military record gets scrutinized so thoroughly that every sealed file gets opened. Every mission you can't talk about gets talked about. She smiled. How do you think your clearance holds up under that kind of pressure? Emily's hands shook. You're threatening me. I'm educating you. Kern's smile faded. You think you won because Troyer got reassigned and I got suspended. You didn't win. You got lucky, and luck runs out. The car stopped. They were back at the hospital parking lot. Kern opened the door. You have 24 hours. Sign the statement or I start making calls. Emily got out. The car drove away. She stood in the parking lot, shaking, and pulled out her phone. Grimes answered on the first ring. Rhodes, talk to me. I just met with Kern. She threatened me. Directly. It's all on the recording. Where are you? Hospital parking lot. Stay there. I'm sending a unit. 2 FBI vehicles arrived 15 minutes later. Grimes got out of the first one. You okay? Emily nodded. Couldn't trust her voice. Grimes took the recording device, listened. Her jaw tightened. That's enough. We're moving on her now. Now? We have the wire transfers, we have the communications, and now we have a direct threat on tape. Grimes looked at Emily. You did it. We can arrest her. Emily felt her knees go weak. When? End of business today. We'll coordinate with local PD. She'll be taken into custody at her home. Grimes put a hand on Emily's shoulder. You need to go home. Stay there. Don't talk to anyone. We'll contact you when it's done. What about Vickery? He's next. Grimes's expression was steel. Anyone who touched this goes down. Emily drove home, sat on her couch, waited. The arrest happened at 6 p.m. Emily watched it on the news. Footage of Kern's house, FBI agents at the door. Kern being led out in handcuffs, face pale, mouth tight. The anchors were breathless. Breaking news. Prominent surgeon arrested on federal fraud and conspiracy charges. Dr. Patricia Kern, who recently made headlines in a wrongful termination lawsuit, was taken into custody this evening. Emily turned off the TV, sat in silence. Her phone rang. Hale. You watching? I was. How you feeling? Emily didn't know how to answer that. Tired. I bet. Hale paused. You did good, Rhodes. Real good. Doesn't feel like it. It will. Give it time. Another pause. The Bureau's going to need you for testimony. Probably a grand jury. Maybe trial, if it goes that far. Okay? But for now, you rest. You earned it. The line went dead. Emily sat in the dark and tried to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, victory. She just felt empty. Shatin. The fallout started immediately.
By the next morning, 3 more people had been arrested. Thomas Vickery, Victor Petros, James Wyrick, the arsonist. The news coverage was wall to wall. Every network picked it up. National, international. Federal authorities dismantle multi-million-dollar fraud scheme at Mercy Ridge General Hospital. Decorated combat medic helps expose corruption. From harassment to heroism. The Emily Rhodes story. Emily's phone didn't stop ringing. Reporters, producers, people wanting interviews, book deals, movie rights. She ignored them all. She went back to work 3 days later, walked through the lobby, past the vending machines, past the reception desk where Ashley sat, wide-eyed and silent. People stared, but not like before. Dr. Voss stopped her in the hallway. "Ms. Rhodes? A word?" Emily followed him to his office. He closed the door. "I owe you an apology, a real one." Voss sat down, gestured for her to do the same. "We should have caught this years ago, but we didn't. We let Kern operate unchecked. We ignored the signs, and you paid the price." Emily said nothing. The board met last night, emergency session. We're implementing new oversight protocols, independent audits, anonymous reporting systems, everything we should have had from the beginning. Voss met her eyes. "And we're offering you that promotion again. Lead surgical nurse, day shift, double the salary we offered before." Emily stared at him. "Why?" "Because you earned it, and because we need people like you." Voss leaned forward. "People who won't look away when something's wrong. People who will fight even when it costs them." Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'll think about it." "Take your time." She stood, turned toward the door. "Ms. Rhodes." She stopped. "Thank you," Voss said quietly, "for not giving up on us." Emily walked out without answering. The trial started 3 months later. Emily testified for 6 hours across 2 days. Vickery's defense attorney tried to shake her, tried to poke holes in her testimony, tried to make her look unstable, vindictive, unreliable. It didn't work. Lang had prepared her well. Emily stuck to the facts, answered every question calmly, didn't rise to the bait. And when they tried to bring up her military record, the judge shut it down. Irrelevant. Inadmissible. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty. All counts. Kern sat at the defense table, face blank, as the verdict was read. 23 years, federal prison, no parole. Vickery got 12. Petros got 15. Wyrick got 8. Emily sat in the gallery and watched them led away in handcuffs. It should have felt like closure. It didn't. She took the promotion. Started the new position 6 weeks after the trial ended. Day shift, better hours, better pay, better parking. People treated her differently now. Respectfully, carefully, like she was fragile, precious. She hated it. But she did the work. Trained new nurses, updated protocols, made the surgical floor run smoother than it had in years. And slowly, very slowly, she started to feel like herself again. 8 months after Kern's arrest, Emily got a package in the mail. No return address. Just her name and apartment number. She opened it carefully. Inside, a letter, handwritten, neat script. "Ms. Rhodes, you don't know me, but I worked with Dr. Kern for 6 years. I saw what she did. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't say anything. I was scared. I had bills. I had family. I told myself it wasn't my problem. Then I watched what she did to you, and I watched you fight back. And I realized I'd been lying to myself. I came forward 3 months ago. Gave the FBI everything I had. They're building cases against 2 other doctors now, people who learned from Kern, people who thought they could get away with it. I just wanted you to know what you did mattered, not just for you, for all of us. Thank you." The letter wasn't signed. Emily read it 3 times, then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. She met Hale for coffee 2 weeks later, same place they'd met before. He looked older, tired. "You doing okay?" he asked. "Yeah, you?" Still breathing, he smiled slightly. "Heard you're making waves at the hospital." "Just doing my job." "That's what you always say." Hale sipped his coffee. "Listen, I wanted to tell you something, off the record. Emily waited. There are people in the Department of Defense who've been watching what you did, how you handled yourself, the testimony, the way you didn't break. Hale set down his cup. If you ever wanted to come back, in a different capacity, there'd be a place for you. Emily blinked. Come back where? Consulting, training, helping us identify institutional problems before they become institutional disasters. Hale met her eyes. You're good at this. Better than most. And we could use someone like you. Emily looked down at her hands. Scarred, steady. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. Hale stood, dropped cash on the table. Take care of yourself, Rhodes. You too, sir. He walked out. Emily sat alone in the coffee shop and thought about the future. For the first time in a long time, it didn't look so dark. But that night, when Emily checked her mailbox, there was another envelope. Plain, white, no postage, hand-delivered. She opened it. Inside, a single photograph. Kern, in prison, orange jumpsuit, dead eyes staring at the camera, and on the back, written in neat script, appeals take years, connections last forever. See you soon. Emily's blood went cold. She pulled out her phone, dialed Grimes. Rhodes, what's wrong? I just got a message from Kern or someone working for her. Silence. Then, what kind of message? Emily told her. Grimes swore. Where are you? Home. Lock your doors. I'm sending someone. She's in prison. How is she? Prison doesn't mean powerless. Not for someone like her. Grimes's voice was hard. Sit tight. We're on our way. The line went dead. Emily sat in her apartment, photograph in her hand, and realized something. This wasn't over. It was never going to be over. This wasn't over. It was never going to be over. Emily locked the door, drew the curtains, sat on the couch with the lights off and the photograph in her hand. Kern's eyes stared up at her from the glossy surface, empty and cold, like looking into a well with no bottom. The knock came 20 minutes later, 3 sharp raps. Emily checked the peephole. Grimes. And 2 other agents Emily didn't recognize. She opened the door. Grimes walked in, eyes scanning the apartment. Anyone else been here today? No. Any unusual calls? Messages? People following you? No, just this. Emily handed over the photograph. Grimes examined it, turned it over, read the message. Her jaw tightened. She passed it to one of the other agents, a white man in his 30s with tired eyes and a wedding ring. Bag it. Get it to the lab. Grimes turned back to Emily. Walk me through it. When did you find this? 10 minutes ago, in my mailbox downstairs. Building have security cameras? One in the lobby, but it's been broken for months. Grimes pulled out her phone, started typing. We'll check anyway. See if we can pull footage from nearby businesses. Someone had to deliver this. The second agent, a black woman with gray streaking her hair, spoke up. Ma'am, if Kern has resources outside, we need to assume she has eyes on Ms. Rhodes. Could be staff. Could be other inmates with connections. Could be family. Kern doesn't have family, Emily said quietly. No kids, no siblings. Parents are dead. Then it's someone else. Grimes pocketed her phone. Someone who thinks they owe her, or someone she's paying. Emily's stomach turned. She embezzled over $1 million. Where did it all go? Good question. Grimes gestured to the other agents. Run financials again, deep dive, offshore accounts, shell companies, anywhere she could have stashed assets. They left. Grimes sat down across from Emily. How are you holding up? Emily almost laughed. How do you think? I think you're scared, and I think you should be. Grimes leaned forward. But I also think you're tougher than this. You've been through worse. Have I? You survived combat, you survived Kern the first time. You'll survive this. Emily looked at her hands. They were shaking again. She hated that. Hated the weakness, the fear, the way her body betrayed her. What if I don't want to keep surviving? She said quietly. What if I just want to live? Grimes didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was softer. Then we make sure you can. But first we end this. For good. How? We find whoever delivered that photo. We trace it back. We cut off every connection Kern has to the outside world. Grimes stood. And we make sure she knows that threatening a federal witness is the fastest way to lose what little freedom she has left. Emily looked up. You think that'll stop her? No, but it'll slow her down, and that's all we need. Mtik. The FBI posted agents outside Emily's building that night. 2 shifts, round the clock. Emily tried to sleep and couldn't. Every creak of the building settling sounded like footsteps. Every car passing outside sounded like someone pulling up to finish what Kern had started. She gave up at 4 a.m., made coffee, sat at her kitchen table, stared at the wall. Her phone buzzed. Not Grimes this time, not Hale. A number she recognized but hadn't called in months. Victoria Lang. Her lawyer, Emily answered. It's early. I know, but I just got a call from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Lang's voice was tight. Kern's legal team filed an emergency motion this morning. They're claiming prosecutorial misconduct, saying the FBI coerced you into giving false testimony. Emily's chest went cold. That's insane. It's desperation, but it's also dangerous. Lang paused. If they can get the judge to believe you were pressured, they can challenge the conviction, get a new trial, maybe even get the charges dismissed. I wasn't pressured. I volunteered. I know, but they're going to paint it differently. They'll say you were vulnerable, that the FBI took advantage of you, that you were promised immunity and protection in exchange for saying what they wanted to hear. Emily's hands tightened around the phone. What do we do? We fight it. I'll file a response. We'll get affidavits from Grimes and Hale, document the timeline, prove you came forward voluntarily. Lang's voice steadied. But Emily, this is going to get ugly. They're going to drag you through the mud. Again. Let them. Emily's voice was flat. I'm not backing down. Good, because they're counting on you to crack. The line went dead. Emily sat in the kitchen, coffee going cold, and wondered how many times she'd have to win before it stuck. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Emily spent those weeks preparing. Lang drilled her on every detail, every conversation, every decision, making sure there were no gaps, no inconsistencies, nothing Kern's team could exploit. Grimes brought in the financials. They'd found it. 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, a total of $1.4 million. Kern had been moving money for years, layer by layer, shell company by shell company, and she'd been making withdrawals, recent ones. She's been paying people, Grimes said. They were in Lang's office, documents spread across the conference table. 5 transactions in the last 6 months, $50,000 each, all to different accounts. Who? Emily asked. We're working on it, but one of them traces back to a man named Garrett Sims. He's a private investigator, the kind who doesn't ask questions. Emily's stomach dropped. The photograph. Probably. We picked him up this morning. He's not talking yet, but he will. Lang looked up from her laptop. If we can prove Kern orchestrated witness intimidation from inside prison, her appeal dies. The judge won't touch it. How long until the hearing? Emily asked. 12 days. Lang closed the laptop. We need Sims to talk. Fast. Sims broke on day 9. Emily was at work when Grimes called. We got him. He admitted Kern hired him through an intermediary. Paid him to deliver the photograph and monitor your movements. Emily's breath caught. He's been watching me? For 3 weeks. Photos. Locations. Daily routines. Grimes's voice was hard. He gave us everything. Names, dates, transactions. And he's willing to testify. Why? Because we offered him a deal, 5 years instead of 20. And because he's smart enough to know Kern can't protect him anymore. Emily closed her eyes. What happens now? Now we take this to the judge and we bury Kern's appeal before it starts. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Kern's lawyers argued their case. Misconduct, coercion, unreliable witness. They played clips of Emily's testimony, highlighting moments where she'd paused, where her voice had shaken, where she'd looked uncertain. This is a woman under duress, Kern's lead attorney argued, manipulated by federal agents who needed a conviction at any cost. Lang stood. Your Honor, the defense would like the court to believe that Ms. Rhodes, a decorated combat veteran with years of experience under pressure, was somehow unable to make her own decisions. That's not just insulting, it's false. She presented the evidence. The timeline showing Emily had approached HR first, not the FBI. The recordings proving Kern had threatened her directly. The financial record showing Kern had the means and motive to intimidate witnesses. And then she called Garrett Sims to the stand. Sims was nervous, sweating, but he told the truth. Dr. Kern hired me through a lawyer, told me to watch Ms. Rhodes, document her routines, make her feel unsafe. Did Dr. Kern tell you why? Lang asked. She said Ms. Rhodes needed to understand that prison didn't change anything, that she still had power. And did you deliver a photograph to Miss Rhodes's residence? Yes. On Dr. Kern's orders? Yes. The judge didn't even recess. He denied the motion from the bench. The defense's claims of coercion are unsupported by the evidence. Miss Rhodes's testimony was credible, corroborated, and voluntarily given. This motion is denied. Furthermore, the court will be referring evidence of witness tampering to the U.S. attorney for additional charges. Kern's face went white. Emily sat in the gallery and felt something inside her finally break free. Additional charges were filed within a week. Witness intimidation, conspiracy to obstruct justice, each carrying another 5 to 10 years. Kern's legal team tried to negotiate, offered cooperation, information on other doctors, other hospitals, other schemes. The U.S. attorney said no. Kern was transferred to a higher security facility, maximum security, no outside communication except monitored calls with her attorneys, no internet, no privileges. Emily got the notification from Grimes via text. She's locked down, for good this time. Emily read the message and felt nothing. No relief, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. She went to work, did her job, trained new nurses, updated protocols, made the surgical floor run smoother, and slowly the attention faded. The reporters stopped calling. The producers moved on to other stories. Emily Rhodes became old news. She preferred it that way. 6 months after the second round of charges, Emily got a visitor at work. A woman in her 60s, white, with kind eyes and a worn coat. She approached Emily in the hallway. "Ms. Rhodes?" Emily turned. "Yes?" "I'm Margaret Sayers. I worked at Mercy Ridge 15 years ago. I was a nurse, like you." Emily waited. "I was harassed by a senior doctor, different doctor, same pattern. I tried to report it. I documented everything. But no one believed me. They said I was difficult, that I had an attitude problem. They forced me out." Margaret's voice shook slightly. "I heard what you did, what you went through, and I wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For fighting, for not giving up, for making it so the next person might not have to go through what we did." Emily's throat tightened. "I didn't do it for anyone else. I did it because I had no choice." "I know, but it mattered anyway." Margaret reached out, squeezed Emily's hand once, and walked away. Emily stood in the hallway, staring after her, and realized something. She hadn't just survived, she'd changed something, made it harder for the next Kern, made it easier for the next person who needed to speak up. It wasn't much, but it was something. Emily took the consulting offer from Hale 3 months later, part-time, advisory role, helping the Department of Defense identify and address institutional problems before they became crises. She kept her job at the hospital too. Lead surgical nurse, day shift. She'd earned it. She wasn't giving it up. But 1 weekend a month, she flew to Washington, sat in conference rooms with military brass and civilian oversight committees, told them what she'd seen, what had worked, what hadn't. They listened, actually listened. It felt strange, being valued, being respected, being treated like she knew what she was talking about. She got used to it. 2 years after Kern's conviction, Emily got a final letter. Federal prison system, official letterhead. Notice of death. Inmate Patricia M. Kern cause, cardiac arrest. No foul play suspected. Emily read it twice. Then she folded it and put it in the drawer with the anonymous letter from Kern's former colleague. She didn't feel relief, didn't feel joy, didn't feel much of anything, just closure. Finally, that night she called her father. "Dad, it's me." "Emily, you okay?"
"Yeah, I'm okay." She paused. "I just wanted to hear your voice." "You sure you're okay?" Emily looked around her apartment. New place. Better neighborhood, windows that locked, heat that worked, a life that felt like hers again. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I am. They talked for an hour, nothing important, just talk. When Emily hung up, she sat in the dark and realized she was smiling.
But 3 days later, another envelope arrived. Plain, white, hand-delivered, Emily's blood went cold. She opened it slowly. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed, professional. Miss Rhodes, my name is Dr. Helena Voss. I'm a cardiac surgeon at Mercy Ridge General. I've been working here for 3 years. I've seen things, heard things. Things that remind me of what happened with Dr. Kern. I don't know who else to trust, but I've watched you. Watched how you handled yourself. Watched what you did. I think something's wrong, and I think I need help. Can we talk? A phone number at the bottom. Emily stared at the letter. Then she picked up her phone and called Grimes. Rhodes, what's wrong? I think we have a problem. Grimes was at Emily's apartment within the hour. She read the letter twice, then pulled out her phone and ran the number. It came back clean, registered to a Helena Voss, cardiac surgeon at Mercy Ridge, 3 years on staff, no red flags. Could be legitimate, Grimes said. Could be a trap. Emily sat across from her, arms crossed. Only one way to find out. You want to meet her. I want to know what she knows. Grimes looked at her for a long moment. You don't owe anyone this. You've done enough. Have I? Emily's voice was quiet. Because it sounds like Kern wasn't the only one. Maybe not, but that doesn't make it your responsibility. Emily thought about Margaret Sayers, the woman who'd been forced out 15 years ago, the anonymous letter from Kern's former colleague, the pattern that kept repeating because people stayed silent. Call her, Emily said. Set up a meeting, somewhere public, somewhere safe. Grimes didn't look happy, but she made the call. They met 2 days later in a diner across town, far from the hospital, far from anywhere either of them was likely to be recognized. Emily arrived first with Grimes and another agent, the same black woman from before, whose name was Torres. Dr. Helena Voss walked in 10 minutes later. She was younger than Emily expected, mid-30s, Asian, with dark circles under her eyes and hands that trembled slightly when she sat down. She ordered coffee she didn't drink. Thank you for meeting me, Voss said. Her voice was soft, controlled. I didn't know who else to contact. Emily leaned forward. What's going on? Voss glanced at Grimes and Torres. Are they? FBI, Emily said. If there's something illegal happening, they need to hear it. Voss swallowed, nodded. There's a doctor, Dr. Raymond Keller, cardiovascular surgery. He's been at Mercy Ridge for 8 years. What about him? Grimes asked. He's cutting corners, falsifying pre-op assessments, performing procedures patients don't need, billing insurance for surgeries he claims took hours when they took minutes. Voss's hands tightened around her coffee cup. People have died. 3 that I know of. Maybe more. Emily felt her chest tighten. How long has this been happening? At least 2 years, probably longer. Voss looked up. I tried reporting it. Went to my supervisor. He told me I was mistaken. That Keller was a respected surgeon, that I needed to be careful making accusations. So you documented it, Emily said. Voss pulled a flash drive from her pocket, set it on the table. Patient files, billing records, surgical notes, everything I could copy without getting caught. Grimes picked up the drive. This is evidence of fraud and malpractice, and at least 3 cases that should be investigated as negligent homicide. Voss's voice cracked. I can't keep working there. I can't keep watching him hurt people. But if I come forward alone, you'll end up like me, Emily finished. Voss nodded. I read about what happened to you, what Dr. Kern did. I thought if anyone would understand. Emily looked at Grimes. Can you investigate this? If the evidence supports it. Grimes pocketed the flash drive. But we'll need Dr. Voss to cooperate, fully. That means testimony, depositions, potentially becoming a witness in a federal case. Voss's face went pale. I could lose my job, my license, everything. Or you could save lives, Emily said quietly, and stop someone who thinks he's untouchable. Voss stared at her. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, what do I do? Auto. The investigation took 6 weeks. Grimes brought in a team, forensic accountants, medical examiners. They reviewed every file Voss had copied, cross-referenced billing records, interviewed former patients and family members. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Keller had been running a scheme for 5 years. Unnecessary surgeries, falsified diagnoses, equipment kickbacks from manufacturers, and 3 deaths that could be directly traced to procedures he'd performed recklessly or incompetently. Emily watched from the sidelines this time. She wasn't the witness, wasn't the target, just someone who knew the pattern, someone who'd been through it before. But Voss needed support, and Emily found herself stepping into a role she hadn't expected. Mentor, guide, someone who'd walked the path and survived. They met for coffee once a week. Emily told her what to expect. The depositions, the scrutiny, the way people would look at her differently, the threats that might come. "How did you get through it?" Voss asked one afternoon. They were sitting in the same diner where they'd first met. Emily thought about it. "I stopped waiting for someone to save me. I realized if I didn't fight, no one would." "But you had help, the FBI, the military." "Eventually, but I started alone." Emily met her eyes. "And so did you. You documented everything. You came forward. You took the risk. That's the hard part. Everything else is just follow-through." Voss was quiet for a moment. "Do you regret it?" "Some days." Emily's voice was honest. "It cost me a lot. Peace. Privacy. The ability to just be a nurse without being the nurse who took down a corrupt doctor." She paused. "But I sleep better now because I know I did the right thing." Voss nodded slowly. "I hope I can say the same." "You will." Bad. Keller was arrested on a Tuesday morning at the hospital, in front of staff and patients. FBI agents walked him out in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. The fallout was immediate. Mercy Ridge's board called an emergency meeting. Dr. Voss was placed on administrative leave pending internal review. 3 other surgeons who'd worked with Keller were suspended. And Emily got a call from Dr. Leonard Voss. "Ms. Rhodes, I need to see you, urgently." They met in his office an hour later. Voss looked older than the last time she'd seen him. More tired, more worn. "Dr. Keller's arrest is going to destroy this hospital's reputation," he said. "We're already facing lawsuits, patients pulling out, donors withdrawing support." Emily crossed her arms. "And you want me to help with damage control?" "No, I want you to help us rebuild." Voss leaned forward. "You exposed Kern. You helped Dr. Voss come forward. You've become a symbol of integrity, of accountability. We need that. Now, more than ever." "What are you asking?" "I'm asking you to join the board. As a patient advocate. Someone with oversight authority. Someone who can make sure this never happens again." Emily stared at him. "You want to give me power. I want to give you a voice and the authority to use it." Voss pulled out a folder. "Full salary, full benefits, and the right to investigate any complaint from any staff member at any time. No interference, no retaliation." Emily opened the folder, read the contract. It was real. Everything he'd promised. "Why me?" "Because you've proven you can't be bought, can't be intimidated, can't be silenced." Voss met her eyes. "And because we need someone the staff will trust, someone who's been where they are." Emily closed the folder. "I need time to think." "Take it." "But, Emily," Voss stood. "If you say yes, you'll have the power to change this place, really change it. Make it what it should have been all along." Emily walked out of that office and sat in her car for 20 minutes, staring at the hospital entrance. She thought about Kern, about Keller, about all the people who'd abused power because no one stopped them. She thought about Margaret Sayers, about the anonymous letter writer, about Dr. Voss, who'd risked everything because she'd seen what happened when Emily fought back. She pulled out her phone, called Lang. "I need you to review a contract." "Tush." Emily accepted the position 3 weeks later. Patient advocate, board member, oversight authority. She kept her clinical role too, part-time now, but still present, still working shifts, still wearing scrubs, because she wasn't just an administrator. She was a nurse, and she wasn't forgetting where she came from.
The first complaint came within a week, a nurse in pediatrics. Being harassed by a senior physician. The nurse had documented everything, was terrified to come forward. Emily met with her privately, read the documentation, verified the claims. Then she walked into the physician's office unannounced. Dr. Marcus Tillman? He looked up, white, late 50s, expensive suit, irritated expression. Can I help you? I'm Emily Rhodes, patient advocate. I've received a complaint about your conduct. Tillman's expression hardened. A complaint from who? That's confidential, but the allegations are serious. Harassment, creating a hostile work environment, retaliation against staff who question your decisions. That's absurd. Emily set a folder on his desk. This is the documentation. Dates, times, witnesses. I'll be forwarding it to HR and the board for review. You'll have a chance to respond, but if the investigation confirms these allegations, you'll be terminated. Tillman stood. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are. Emily's voice was ice. And I know what you've been doing. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate with the investigation. You're going to stop the behavior, or you're going to leave. Those are your options. You can't talk to me like this. I just did. Emily turned toward the door. You have 48 hours to decide if you want to do this the easy way or the hard way. I don't care which. She walked out. Tillman filed a counter-complaint within 6 hours. Emily had expected it. The investigation took 2 weeks. Tillman's conduct was documented, corroborated, undeniable. He resigned before the board could vote on termination. The nurse who'd filed the complaint sent Emily a card. Just 2 words. Thank you. Emily put it on her desk, next to the letter from Margaret Sayers. Reminders. 6 months into the new role, Emily was invited to speak at a medical conference. National level, panel on institutional accountability. She almost said no. Public speaking wasn't her thing, never had been. But Lang convinced her. You have a platform now, use it. So Emily stood on a stage in front of 300 healthcare professionals and told her story. Not the sanitized version, the real one. The harassment, the gaslighting, the threats, the fire. The choice to fight back even when it seemed hopeless. I'm not special, she said. Her voice echoed in the conference hall. I'm not braver than anyone else. I was just tired of being invisible. Tired of watching people with power abuse it. Tired of waiting for someone else to fix things. She paused, looked out at the audience, doctors, nurses, administrators, people who held lives in their hands every day. You all have power, more than you think, and what you do with it matters. Emily's voice steadied. You can look away. You can tell yourself it's not your problem. You can stay silent because it's easier. Or you can speak up, document what you see, support the people who come forward, make it harder for the next Kern, the next Keller, the next person who thinks they're untouchable. The room was silent. It won't be easy, Emily continued. You'll face pushback. You'll be called difficult, problematic, a troublemaker. People will try to make you the problem instead of addressing the real problem. She met their eyes. But you're stronger than you think, and you're not alone. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause started slowly, then built. People stood. The ovation lasted 2 full minutes. Emily walked off stage and found Grimes waiting in the wings. Hell of a speech, Grimes said. Thanks. You believe it? What you said about not being special? Emily thought about it. Yeah, I do. Well, you're wrong. Grimes smiled slightly. But don't let it go to your head. And 1 year after accepting the board position, Emily was reviewing quarterly reports when her assistant knocked. Someone here to see you, says it's personal. Emily looked up. Who? She wouldn't give a name, just said you'd want to talk to her. Emily followed her assistant to the lobby. A woman stood near the windows. Older, white, familiar. Karen Delacroix. The security supervisor who'd tried to have Emily removed from the lobby 3 years ago. Emily felt her jaw tighten. What do you want? Delacroix turned. She looked smaller than Emily remembered, older, defeated. I wanted to apologize. Emily crossed her arms. Okay. I was wrong about you, about everything. Delacroix's voice shook. I got caught up in the politics, in covering for people who didn't deserve it, and I turned into someone I didn't recognize. Why tell me this?
Because I've been watching what you've done, the changes you've made, the people you've protected. Delacroix swallowed, and I realized I had a choice. I could keep being bitter, or I could admit I was wrong and try to do better. Emily studied her, looked for deception, for manipulation, found only exhaustion. "What are you doing now?" Emily asked. "Working at a clinic, low-level admin. It's all I could get after." She trailed off. "I'm trying to rebuild." Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then, "We're hiring, patient services, entry level. If you're serious about doing better, there's a spot." Delacroix's eyes widened. "After what I did to you?" "Everyone deserves a second chance, if they earn it." Emily's voice was firm. "But if you screw up, if you abuse power, if you retaliate, if you make anyone feel the way you made me feel, you're gone. No warnings, no excuses. Understood?" Delacroix nodded. "Understood." "Good. Talk to HR." Delacroix left. Emily stood in the lobby, looking at the spot where she'd been surrounded by security 3 years ago, the place where everything had started. It felt like a lifetime ago. Emily's father visited 6 months later. First time he'd been to the city in years. She picked him up at the airport and drove him to her new apartment, bigger, nicer, in a building where the heat worked and the windows locked. "You've done well for yourself," he said, looking around. "I've survived." He smiled slightly. "Same thing sometimes." They had dinner at a quiet restaurant, talked about nothing important, family, weather, the state of his garden back home. Then over coffee he said, "I'm proud of you, you know that?" Emily looked up. "For what?" "For not letting them break you." He met her eyes. "I was worried. After you left the service, after you got hurt, I thought—" He paused. "I thought you'd lost your fight." "I almost did." "But you didn't. You found it again, and you used it to help people." He reached across the table, squeezed her hand. "That takes guts. Real guts." Emily's throat tightened. "I just did what I had to do." "No. You did what was right. There's a difference." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emily's father said, "Your mother would be proud too, wherever she is." Emily's vision blurred. She nodded. Couldn't trust her voice. Her father paid the check. They walked back to the car, and for the first time in years, Emily felt something she hadn't felt since before the injury, before the discharge, before everything fell apart. She felt whole. 2 years after Kern's death, Mercy Ridge General held a dedication ceremony. A new wing, state-of-the-art equipment, funded by settlements from the lawsuits against Kern and Keller. The hospital board wanted to name it after a donor, a surgeon, someone prestigious. Emily suggested something different. Name it after the people who survived, the staff who came forward, the patients who were harmed. Make it a memorial, a promise. The board voted unanimously. The Margaret Sayers Memorial Wing opened on a cold Tuesday in November. Survivors attended, staff who'd been pushed out, families who'd lost loved ones, people who'd fought and bled and refused to stay silent. Emily stood at the podium during the dedication. She hadn't planned to speak, but Dr. Voss asked her to, said it mattered, so she did. "This wing isn't just a building," Emily said. Her voice carried across the crowd. "It's a promise that we'll do better, that we'll listen when people speak up, that will protect the vulnerable instead of the powerful." She looked at the faces in the audience, doctors, nurses, administrators, survivors. "We can't undo what happened, can't bring back the people we lost, can't erase the harm that was done." Emily's voice steadied. "But we can make sure it means something. We can build systems that work. We can create environments where speaking up is rewarded, not punished. We can choose accountability over silence." She paused. Margaret Sayers tried to do that 30 years ago. She was punished for it, pushed out, silenced. But she didn't stop believing that things could change, that people could do better. Emily looked at Margaret, sitting in the front row. Their eyes met. This wing is proof she was right. The applause was thunderous. That night, Emily sat in her apartment with a glass of wine she didn't drink and a notebook she'd kept since the beginning. Every shift, every patient, every battle fought and won. She flipped to the last page, wrote one final entry. 3 years ago, I was invisible. Today, I'm not. Not because I'm special, but because I refuse to accept that invisibility was my only option. I don't know what comes next, but I know I'm not afraid of it anymore. She closed the notebook, put it on the shelf next to her military ID and the letters from Margaret and the anonymous colleague. Reminders of where she'd been, who she'd become. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Voss. Another complaint came in. Surgical resident. Claims her supervisor is falsifying research data. Can we meet tomorrow? Emily stared at the message. Then she typed back. 8 a.m. My office. Bring documentation. She set the phone down, looked around her apartment, at the life she'd built from the wreckage, at the future she'd carved out with bleeding hands and sheer stubbornness. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was hers, and she'd earned every inch of it. 5 years after the lobby incident, Emily was invited back to speak at Mercy Ridge's annual staff meeting. The hospital had changed. New leadership, new policies, a culture that, slowly, imperfectly, was learning to value accountability over hierarchy. Emily stood at the podium and looked out at 1,000 faces. People who knew her story, people who didn't. People who'd been there from the beginning and people who'd joined after. I'm not going to tell you it's easy to speak up, she said. It's not. You'll face resistance. You'll be questioned. You'll lose sleep. You'll wonder if it's worth it. She paused. Let the silence settle. But here's what I learned. Silence doesn't protect you. It protects the people who hurt you. And every time you stay silent, you give them permission to hurt someone else. Emily looked at the faces in the crowd, saw herself 5 years ago, tired, scared, alone. You're not alone. Not anymore. There are systems now, people now, protection now. Not perfect, but better than before. Her voice strengthened. And if those systems fail, you fight anyway, because you deserve better. The people around you deserve better. And the only way things change is if someone refuses to accept things as they are. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause started immediately. But Emily wasn't listening. She was watching the faces, the nurses in the back row who were nodding, the young resident in scrubs who was wiping her eyes, the older doctor who looked ashamed. Change didn't happen all at once. It happened one person at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of courage that inspired another. Emily had been that moment for some people, and someday one of them would be that moment for someone else. The cycle would continue, and maybe, just maybe, it would get easier. Emily Rhodes walked out of Mercy Ridge General that evening and stood in the parking lot, looking at the building where everything had changed, the lobby where she'd been surrounded, the floor where she'd worked invisible shifts, the office where she now made decisions that mattered. Her knee ached. It always would. Some injuries didn't heal completely. But she didn't need to be whole to be strong. Didn't need to be perfect to make a difference. She just needed to keep showing up. Emily got in her car, drove home, made dinner, called her father, did all the ordinary things that made up a life. And somewhere in the city, someone else was documenting. Someone else was gathering evidence. Someone else was making the choice to speak up instead of stay silent. Because Emily had proven it was possible. And that made all the difference. She'd been invisible once, dismissed, underestimated, pushed aside. Not anymore. Now, when Emily Rhodes walked into a room, people listened. Not because she demanded it, but because she'd earned it, one painful step at a time. Emily sat at her desk the next morning, reviewing the new complaint Dr. Voss had sent over. The surgical resident's name was Maya Patel, 28, second year, already showing promise in cardiovascular procedures. The complaint alleged her supervising surgeon, Dr. Richard Brennan, was pressuring her to falsify data in a clinical study. Brennan needed positive results to secure grant funding. Patel had refused. Now she was being frozen out of surgeries, given the worst rotations, watched constantly for any mistake. The pattern was so familiar it made Emily's chest ache. She called Patel in for a meeting. The young woman arrived 10 minutes early, dark circles under her eyes, hands gripping a folder so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Dr. Patel, sit." Patel sat, didn't let go of the folder. Emily leaned back in her chair. "Tell me what's happening. Everything." Patel's voice shook at first, then steadied as she went through it. The study, the pressure, the retaliation. She had documentation, emails, text messages, Audio recordings she'd made on her phone when Brennan had cornered her in the supply room and told her she'd never work in cardiovascular surgery again if she didn't cooperate. Emily listened to the entire recording. Brennan's voice was calm, almost friendly, but the threat was clear.
"You did the right thing," Emily said when it finished. "Coming forward, documenting everything." "I'm terrified," Patel's voice cracked. "If this goes wrong, my career is over. I'll be blacklisted. I'll never match anywhere decent. Or Brennan will be held accountable and you'll be protected." Emily met her eyes. "I know you're scared. I was too. But I also know that fear is what people like Brennan count on. They think you'll be too afraid to fight back." "What if I am?"
"Then you fight anyway." Emily's voice was firm. "You think I wasn't terrified when I filed my complaint? I was shaking so hard I could barely sign my name. But I did it, because the alternative was letting them win." Patel was quiet for a long moment. "What happens now?" "Now I take this to the board. We launch an investigation. Brennan gets suspended pending the outcome. You get protection. And if the evidence supports your claims, which it will, he's done." "Just like that?"
"Not just like that. It'll take time. He'll fight back. His lawyers will try to discredit you. The process will be exhausting." Emily leaned forward. "But you won't be alone. I'll be with you every step. So will the legal team. So will every person in this hospital who's tired of watching people like Brennan get away with it." Patel's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning."
Brennan's suspension was announced that afternoon. His reaction was immediate and explosive. He stormed into Emily's office without knocking, face red, voice shaking with rage. "You have no right." Emily cut him off. "I have every right. I'm the patient advocate. I investigate complaints. You're being investigated." Based on lies from a resident who couldn't handle the pressure. Based on documented evidence of research fraud and retaliation. Emily stood. "You're suspended, pending investigation. You'll have an opportunity to respond. But right now, you need to leave." "Do you know who I am?" Brennan stepped closer. "I've published over 40 papers. I've secured millions in grant funding. I've trained dozens of residents, and you've abused your power. Repeatedly. That ends now." Brennan's expression twisted. "You think you're untouchable because you took down Kern. You're not. I have friends, connections, people who actually matter in this field." Emily walked around her desk, stood directly in front of him. "Then call them, because I have something better. I have the truth, and I have survivors who are done staying silent." She opened the door. "Leave, now, or I'll have security remove you." Brennan left, but Emily knew he'd be back. People like him always came back. She was ready. The investigation into Brennan took 3 months. During that time, 4 more residents came forward, all with similar stories. Pressure to falsify data, retaliation when they refused, a pattern of abuse spanning 6 years. The board voted unanimously to terminate him. His medical license was suspended pending review by the state medical board. 2 of his published studies were retracted when independent review found evidence of data manipulation. Brennan hired lawyers, threatened lawsuits, made statements to the press claiming he was being targeted by a corrupt system. Nobody believed him, because this time the evidence was overwhelming, and this time the institution didn't protect him. Maya Patel finished her residency, matched at one of the top cardiovascular programs in the country, sent Emily a card on her last day. "You saved my career, maybe my life. I won't forget." Emily added it to her collection. The pattern repeated, not constantly, but regularly enough that Emily stopped being surprised when her assistant knocked and said someone needed to talk. Another complaint, another case of harassment, fraud, retaliation, abuse. Some were legitimate, some weren't. Emily investigated them all with the same thoroughness, the same commitment, because every complaint deserved to be heard. Every person deserved to be taken seriously. She won some fights, lost others, learned to accept that not every battle ended the way she wanted. But she never stopped fighting. And slowly, the culture at Mercy Ridge changed. People started speaking up earlier. Documentation became routine. Retaliation became rarer, not gone, but harder to get away with. The hospital's reputation improved. Patients returned, donors came back, staff retention went up. And Emily Rhodes became a fixture. Not a symbol, not a hero, just someone who did her job, someone people trusted. 3 years into her role as patient advocate, Emily was approached by a national healthcare organization. They wanted her to consult, help them develop accountability systems for hospitals across the country, train administrators, create protocols. "You've proven it works," the director said during their first meeting. Mercy Ridge went from a scandal-ridden disaster to a model institution in less than 5 years. "We want to replicate that." "It's not replicable," Emily said. "Every institution is different. Every culture is different. But the principles are the same: accountability, transparency, protection for whistleblowers." Emily thought about it. "I'd need to keep my position at Mercy Ridge. I'm not leaving." "We wouldn't ask you to. This would be consulting, 10 days a month. You'd travel to different hospitals, assess their systems, make recommendations. And if they don't like my recommendations, then they don't get certified." The director smiled. "We're creating a national standard. Hospitals that meet it get a seal of approval, better insurance rates, preferential treatment from donors. Hospitals that don't—" She shrugged. "They explain to their boards why they're not willing to do the bare minimum." Emily felt something stir in her chest. Not excitement, something quieter. Purpose. "I'll need final say on the standards, no compromises." "Done. And I want protection for anyone who comes forward. Real protection, not just policy. Enforcement. We're working on it. Federal legislation. It's moving slowly, but it's moving." Emily nodded. "Okay, I'm in." The consulting work was harder than Emily expected. Not physically, though the travel was exhausting, but emotionally. Every hospital had its own version of Kern, its own Brennan, its own culture of silence and complicity. Some administrators welcomed Emily's recommendations, implemented changes immediately. Others resisted, made excuses, claimed their situation was different, their doctors too important to discipline, their donors too powerful to offend. Emily didn't budge. "You want certification? You meet the standards. All of them, no exceptions." Some hospitals walked away, others complained. A few tried to get her fired. None of it worked, because the organization backed her, and because enough hospitals were willing to change that the ones who refused started looking worse and worse. Within 2 years, over 300 hospitals had been certified. Hundreds more were in the process, and the ones who refused were facing public pressure from patients, staff, and advocacy groups. Change was happening, slowly, imperfectly, but happening. Emily was in Cleveland reviewing a hospital's complaint protocols when she got a call from Hale. She hadn't heard from him in months. "Rhodes, you busy?" "Always. What's up?" "I need you back in D.C. There's someone who wants to meet you." "Who?" "Senator Barbara Whitfield. She's chairing a committee on healthcare oversight. She's seen the work you've been doing. Wants to talk about federal legislation." Emily's stomach dropped. "I'm not a politician." "She doesn't want you to be. She wants you to testify, tell your story, explain what works and what doesn't." Hale paused. "This could actually change things, Rhodes, on a national level." Emily closed her eyes. "When?" 3 weeks. Hearing's already scheduled." "Okay, send me the details." Emily testified before the Senate committee on a Thursday morning in March. The hearing room was packed: reporters, advocates, lobbyists, people whose job was to make sure nothing changed. Senator Whitfield, black, 60s, sharp eyes, opened with a question. "Ms. Rhodes, you've been working in healthcare oversight for 5 years now. In your experience, what's the biggest obstacle to accountability?" Emily thought about Kern, Brennan, all the others. Fear. People are afraid to speak up because they know the system won't protect them. And they're right. Most of the time it doesn't. What would change that? Federal protection, real protection, legal immunity for whistleblowers, financial penalties for institutions that retaliate, independent oversight that can't be controlled by hospital boards or donors. Some would say that's too extreme, that it would create a culture of constant suspicion. I'd say we already have that. But right now, the suspicion is pointed at victims, not perpetrators. Emily leaned forward. I was accused of being difficult, of having an attitude problem, of fabricating evidence, all because I documented harassment and fraud. If there had been federal protection in place, that wouldn't have happened, or at least it would have been harder. Whitfield nodded. And what about institutions that claim they can't afford these changes, that it would be too expensive? Then they can't afford to operate, because if you can't afford to protect your staff and patients, you have no business running a hospital. The room went silent. Whitfield smiled slightly. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Your testimony has been very enlightening. The legislation passed 8 months later. Not perfect, watered down in some areas, stronger than expected in others. But it passed. Federal protections for healthcare whistleblowers, mandatory reporting systems, independent oversight boards, penalties for retaliation. It wouldn't solve everything, but it was a start. Emily watched the vote from her office at Mercy Ridge. When the final count came through, 62 to 38 in favor, she allowed herself a moment, one moment to feel something close to satisfaction. Then she went back to work.
Emily's father died 2 years later. Heart attack, quick. He didn't suffer. She flew home for the funeral, stood in the cemetery where her mother was buried, and listened to the pastor talk about a man she'd known but never fully understood until recently. Stubborn, principled, unwilling to compromise on things that mattered. She realized where she'd gotten it from. After the service, an older woman approached her, someone Emily didn't recognize. You're Emily, right? Your father's daughter? Yes. He talked about you all the time, about what you did, what you're doing. The woman smiled. He was so proud, even when he didn't know how to say it. Emily's throat closed. Thank you. The woman squeezed her hand and walked away. Emily stood alone at her father's grave and realized she'd been carrying his approval with her all along, in the way he'd taught her to stand up, to fight back, to refuse to be small. She just needed to learn how to use it. 10 years after the lobby incident, Mercy Ridge held a gala, fundraiser for the Margaret Sayers Memorial Wing. Black tie, donors, politicians, people Emily normally avoided, but she attended anyway, because part of the job was showing up, being visible, reminding people that accountability mattered. She was standing near the bar, nursing a drink she didn't want, when someone tapped her shoulder. Tasha Gomes, older now, dressed in a sharp suit instead of scrubs. Emily Rhodes. Still refusing to enjoy these things, I see. Emily smiled, actually smiled. Tasha, what are you doing here? I'm the new chief nursing officer, started last month. Tasha grinned. Turns out watching you fight the system made me realize I wanted to help run it. So I went back to school, got my doctorate, worked my way up. That's amazing. It's exhausting, but worth it. Tasha's expression softened. I wanted to thank you for showing me what was possible, for proving that speaking up didn't have to mean career suicide. Emily shook her head. You did that yourself. Maybe, but you started it. Tasha raised her glass. To starting things. Emily raised hers. To finishing them. They drank. Shut. Emily retired from clinical nursing at 52. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. Her knee couldn't handle the long shifts anymore, and there were other ways to contribute. She kept the consulting work, kept the board position, kept fighting. But she also started teaching, guest lectures at nursing schools, seminars on advocacy and accountability, helping the next generation understand that they had power. They just had to be willing to use it. One of her students approached her after a lecture, young, nervous, Latina. Miss Rhodes, can I ask you something? Of course. How do you know when to fight? When it's worth it? Emily thought about the question, about all the battles she'd fought, the ones she'd won and the ones she'd lost. You fight when the alternative is worse, she said finally. When staying silent would hurt more than speaking up. When you realize that fear is just fear, and on the other side of it is the person you're supposed to be. The student nodded slowly. What if I'm not brave enough? You will be, when it matters. Emily met her eyes. And if you're not, you fight anyway. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what needs to be done despite it. The student smiled. Thank you. Emily watched her leave and hoped she wouldn't need the advice.
hoped the systems had improved enough that speaking up wouldn't cost everything. But she knew better. Some things took generations to change. All she could do was her part. Emily Rhodes turned 60 on a quiet Sunday in April. No party, no celebration, just dinner with a few friends, former colleagues, people who'd been there through the worst of it. They toasted her, told stories, laughed about things that hadn't been funny at the time. And when it was over, Emily went home to her apartment, different from the one where it had all started, but still modest, still hers, and sat on her balcony looking out at the city. She thought about the girl who'd joined the army at 18, the medic who'd seen things she couldn't talk about, the woman who'd come home broken and spent years trying to put herself back together. She thought about the nurse who'd been invisible, the whistleblower who'd been threatened, the advocate who'd learned to fight back, all the versions of herself, all the people she'd been. And she realized something. She wasn't ashamed of any of them anymore. Not the scared one, not the angry one, not the one who'd made mistakes or the one who'd almost given up. Because they'd all led here, to a life that mattered, to work that made a difference, to a legacy that would outlast her. Emily Rhodes had been underestimated her entire life, by teachers who thought she wouldn't amount to anything, by commanders who didn't think women belonged in combat zones, by doctors who dismissed her because she was just a nurse, by administrators who thought they could silence her. They'd all been wrong, not because she was special, not because she was perfect, but because she'd refused to accept their version of who she was supposed to be. She'd defined herself, on her own terms, in her own way. And in doing so, she had shown others they could do the same. That was the real victory. Not the convictions, not the policy changes, not the recognition. The knowledge that somewhere out there, someone was fighting because Emily had fought first. Someone was speaking up because Emily had proven it was possible. Someone was refusing to be invisible because Emily had shown them how. The cycle would continue long after she was gone, and that was enough. Emily Rhodes leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, and smiled. She'd earned this peace, every painful step of the way. The end.